You know, whether or not you talk about Kiwanis First Nation in the Yukon or Selkirk First Nation, whether or not you talk about the First Nations in BC, many First Nations already have guiding frameworks for relationship between industry, whether or not it's oil and gas, whether or not it's mining, whether or not it's forestry. They've already developed appropriate policies that guide the relationship. And I think it's important that even First Nations in this country share that kind of good practice. If we do that, we don't have to see these issues in isolation. I mean, if you're talking about mining, diamond mining, for instance, even in Northern Ontario, the fact is, diamond mining was a big process in the Northwest Territories many years ago.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And people need to look at what benefit agreements that they were able to negotiate, whether or not it was particular First Nation communities or a First Nation government that represented a group of communities, how they were able to deal with issues related to the environment, environmental monitoring, contracting, community benefits. All of those things exist. And some of the better business arrangements have exist in those areas, and part of that is over a longer period of time they've learned some lessons. When we first began, the agreements may not have been as good as the ones they have now, but it's lessons learned. So in Ontario, or for that matter in Manitoba, Northern Manitoba, or in Quebec, even in Quebec, you see how the James Bay been able to negotiate wonderful agreements. So if in the process that we don't look at these issues as simply a location, but rather that we're talking about how we can improve the quality of life and the benefits for First Nations across the country, we don't need to look at these issues in isolation. We don't have to look at it in terms of saying, oh, because it's in our region, we know better. I agree. From an environmental, from a land use perspective, you know better. But from a business perspective, if we can share the information across our nation, we can develop wonderful policies. BC has some of the First Nations, the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, they have some of the best resource policies guided by Dave Porter and directed by the First Nation leadership of British Columbia. So if we can take those experiences and share them across the country and look at them not in the context of saying we know better, but rather and who's right.
In the spirit of sharing.
What's right. If we do what's right for our communities, we can share the best practices across the country without ever looking at it as being it's from that region versus this region.
That's great.
And I really think that's an important principle.
Right. Well, great. Thanks for sharing those words with us.